As an associate member and minister, I have heard lots of sermons during my 16 years working at my church in South Carolina. As I reflect on all of those sermons, the ones that had true stories in them are the ones that kept my interest. Having been part of the CBF since one of its first meetings in Atlanta 20 years ago, I have been able to see many examples of CBF people feeding and housing and clothing and visiting. Then I thought I might share just a few stories of how CBF is being the presence of Christ around the world. Have you ever been somewhere and lost your heart? Somewhere where you knew you were home? Somewhere where you felt that you belonged? For my family, the feeling one time came as we left the Baptist Theological Seminary at Richmond, and I was interviewing at a number of churches. My husband Shane went with me to these interviews, and when Shane and I were leaving the Oakland Baptist Church in Rock Hill, he looked at me and said, "I don't know where you're going, but I'm coming here." You see, he had already lost his heart at Oakland and in Rock Hill, and that was 16 years ago, and we have found a home in our church and our community. Well, those words, "I have lost my heart here," were uttered a few months ago by Jenny Jenkins. She is one of CBF's field personnel serving in Haiti. A few months ago, I arrived at the Port-au-Prince airport with Nell Green, one of our field personnel, and her son Brandon. We were hot and tired, and our luggage was really, really heavy. It was very, very hot. Our luggage was loaded with the medical supplies that Jenny needed in her clinic. Did I mention that it was hot? Then, after some confusion with my cell phone that didn't work the way it was supposed to, we could see Jenny and Johnson, who is one of CBF's helpers there in Haiti, coming through the crowd, and I was so relieved. Jenny and Johnson showed up with cold drinks and granola bars, and those were the best I ever had. During my week in Haiti, I was so impressed with Jenny. You see, she has lost her heart in Haiti. After many mission trips as a volunteer to work among the Haitian people, she felt that God was calling her to serve in a more permanent way the people of Haiti. So she has been appointed by CBF for a 3-year term through our disaster relief funding. She partners with other local Baptist churches in Haiti to run free mobile medical clinics up in the mountains. We saw more than 60 people each day at these clinics that were held in the ruins of churches on mountainsides. Jenny cared for those with funguses, those with colds, those with high blood pressure. She also cared for those who were suffering from malnutrition, and she cared for little premature babies. You see, she's the hands and feet of Christ among the poorest people in the Western Hemisphere. She is a picture of God's grace and compassion. She represents us, CBF, well. She is the face of CBF among Haitians, and we should all be very proud. Now let me tell you about Apollinaire. Apollinaire is from the Congo, and he is a migrant living in North Africa, and he's there in that country in North Africa illegally. He has tried to seek asylum in that country because he fled his country because of war. He lives in a one-room apartment shared by other migrants. He spent many harrowing months trying to cross the Sahara Desert to get into North Africa, and now he is trying to cross to get into Europe. He has risked his life countless times, first just getting into North Africa, and then other times trying to get into Europe. And why is he doing this? Because his country is full of war and corruption and poverty. And he hopes to make it into Europe so that he can send money back to his family in the Congo. But he is not allowed to work in this North African country because he is undocumented. And then he lives in constant fear that the government will arrest him and take him back to the Sahara Desert and leave him there in the desert with no food or water. But Apollinaire is a strong Christian. In spite of the desperate situations he lives in, he finds opportunities to worship God each week. You see, there are underground churches in this Muslim country. It's against the law to worship anywhere except in a few state-approved churches. But he and his fellow Christians risk arrest each week as they gather to worship, because he believes that God will provide and that God will take care of him. In the past, he even made a little bit of money working with our field personnel who lived in North Africa. And he would take groups of Americans to various places in his country. And then he would help run the promenades, which was a time when other migrants and refugees could come to a little church and get a little bit of money, food, and clothing or medicine. And then he prays with each of these migrants. You see, he is the hands and feet of Christ among the most despised and neglected people in North Africa. He is a picture of God's grace and compassion. He represents us, the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship, well. He is the face of CBF among Muslims and migrating Africans. We should all be very, very proud. If I had more time, I could tell you countless stories of CBF people being the presence of Christ around the world, and even right here in the United States. So what is your story? Are you busy being the presence of Christ to the least of these? Are you busy feeding the hungry, visiting those, housing those who are homeless? How does your story fit into the story that is being written about God's work around the world today? Loving Jesus and wanting to share the unending story of Jesus' love causes us to do weird things. It causes us to go to Haiti and live in dire circumstances with little electricity, no running water, and trash everywhere. It causes us to worship and help in places where life is risk, like North Africa. And it causes us to connect with a fledgling movement called CBF that still causes people to scratch their heads when you try to describe who we are and what we do. So why do we do these things? Because we love Jesus and we want others to experience Jesus' love for them. We want to serve the least of these because we are then serving Christ. One of the things that I am most grateful for when I think about the CBF is that there is a place at the table for all of us. There is room at the table for a middle-aged nurse to lose her heart in Haiti. There is room for a migrant from the Congo to serve. And there is room for women ministers to preach and serve. There is room for those who are divorced, those who are young, those who are poor, those who are the down and outs of society, and for those who are the upwardly mobile. At CBF's table and at God's table, there is room. There is a place for everyone, for each of us. For that is my story too. For without CBF, I would not have a place to serve and still be a Baptist in the South. So look around this room. Who is not here? Who needs to be at CBF's table? Who is being left out? Whose story is not being told? Who are we not serving? I think for each of us, who we exclude is different. For some of us, it's the opposite political party than the one we belong to. For some of us, it's people who are from a different country than the one we call home. For some of us, it's people whose lifestyles and choices are very different from ours. So who is excluded? My hope and prayer for the next 20 years of the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship is that we will seriously examine who is the least of these among us, and that we will find ways to connect and serve and include all, because you never know when you might be serving and including Jesus. Amen. I now recognize Bill McConnell, who is the chair of our Finance Committee, for the presentation of the 2011-2012 Ministry and Missions Budget.